thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fouad Kassab. Welcome everybody to A Quirky Journey, and Fouad is on a journey right now in his car to the airport. Hi Fouad.
Hey Jo, how's it going?
Good. Are you excited?
I am, and I'm indicating to go into another lane. I hope the indicator doesn't come across.
I can hear it.
You can?
I don't know. I thought I heard something, but it doesn't matter. I can hear you, so you're nice and clear. So if it sounds like Fouad's talking from a echoing box or something, it's just his car, okay, guys?
Yeah. Well, Jo,
yes,
we've got a really good podcast ahead of us now. Mm-hmm. Who have we interviewed today?
Okay, so we've got our good friend Alexx Stuart from Low Tox Life, and we did mention her in 2 podcasts ago. We were talking about some changes that are important to make before you even start changing your diet when you're trying to get healthier and to work on lifestyle changes. And one of the things that we mentioned was detoxing the home. And since Alexx is the Low Tox home queen, we thought it's about time we got her back onto the podcast to talk to her about her tips for reducing the toxic load in your home and just some really practical things that you can do. So Alexx has recently released her first book, which is called Low Tox Life. And it's a really great book, isn't it, Fouad?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it yet.
Oh, that's right. You didn't get it.
I saw her at the Mind Forum when she had. It's on its way. I'm going to buy one as well.
Yeah.
But I had a look for 4 minutes or so. I looked through it when she was at the Mind Forum, and I looked at all the different pages and chapters and the things there. But I don't know it in depth still. But yeah, it looks fantastic.
It's just so, really, really great. For one thing, it's a beautiful book and really well laid out, but it just has so many practical tips for detoxing your home, reducing the toxic load, getting rid of plastics in the home, also all of that kind of thing. A lot of really easy recipes for things you can just make yourself. There's also recipes that are food recipes. Yay! And there's some beautiful recipes in there. And Alexx has just done a really great job with this book. So we're going to be selling it in our shop, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes, online.
We found it, it's that kind of thing that really complements the work that we do. And Alexx is the expert on, all things low tox. So it's wonderful to have such a resource because there's a lot of books that come out about health and lifestyle and well-being. And it's kind of hard sometimes to know whether the person who's written it really is coming from the right perspective or not. Mm. And knowing Alexx as we do, it's just such a no-brainer to have a book like that complement our collection in the online shop. So if you're interested in getting the book, make sure you go to quirkycooking.com.au and buy it from there and support us and support Alexx. It's a great cause and a great book.
Yeah. So Alexx isn't actually selling it on her website. She's just selling it through bookshops and people like us because she wants to, support everybody who's trying to help her sell it. So that's really lovely. So we also talked to Alexx not just about the general detox the home and book. We also got into a big discussion about mould illness because Alexx has been through that and how she's had to work through it and what she did. So that's going to be really helpful for those of you who want to know more about reducing the mould in your home and what to do if you're struggling with mould illness.
Yeah, that was a large part of the discussion around that. It was really an eye-opener. I've been in a lot of homes where, mold is there. Like, this is a very commonplace thing, isn't it?
It is. I can't remember the percentage. She did say, but there's a very large percentage of homes in Australia that are infected with mould, if that's what you would call it. And you don't always see it. So it's something that, if you're struggling with the symptoms that she talks about, it might be a good thing to get checked.
I'm so happy I did the building biology stuff. That was really great. And
I want to do that.
Go back to that episode with Nicole if you guys are interested in building biology and how to find out whether you have a mold issue or not in the house. All these things are covered already in there.
Yes, they are. Well, it's going to be a big week ahead, so you're probably nearly to the airport.
Yes, probably. I am 10 minutes away.
Oh.
I took a wrong turn because I was focusing on it.
Oops. You're not going to be late for your plane, are you?
No, it's all right. I've given it enough buffer.
Okay.
I've learned my lesson, Jo.
Yeah?
I don't,
Yeah, same. I don't ever leave airport trips to the last minute.
No.
It's nice having that time to actually sit and relax and have a cuppa before you get on the plane anyway.
Yes, definitely. So that's what I'm hoping for. Just a nice sit down, work on my slides for the Wellness Summit.
Yep.
And from there, have a nice, happy flight, listen to some flute music on the way, something like that. Excited about the trip ahead. You know, my flute teacher lives in Melbourne, but he's going to be in Byron Bay.
Oh, what a pity.
While I'm there. Shame, huh?
Yeah, that is a shame.
I would have liked to meet him face to face, but it's not going to happen.
Ah, well, maybe next time we'll be back.
Yeah.
For sure. So many exciting things happening. So if you guys wanted to know more about any of those, we'll just put all the details in the show notes, and you can click through and have a look at what's going on and what's coming up for Quirky Cooking and the dinners Fouad's doing and all sorts of things.
Yes.
All right. Safe travels, Foo.
Thanks, Jo. See you on Friday.
Okay. See ya. Welcome. We're so happy to have you all here today. I'm Jo, and I've got my co-host Fouad here.
Hey, Jo.
Hi, Foo.
Hello.
And we have our lovely friend Alexx with us today. We're so happy to have you, Alexx. Hi.
I'm so happy to be back. It's been ages.
I know. I was looking for a link to the podcast I did with you ages ago, the other day, to share it. And I was like, oh, was it that long ago? I said, Fouad, we need to do another podcast with Alexx.
I know, right?
And especially since your new book came out. Oh, my goodness. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. It's an amazing, you guys know well because you have
it's very exciting feeling.
More experience in this world than I do. But as a first-time book baby maker, it's just an amazing thing to be able to share something so tangible. You know, we all have these conversations, we create digital products, but to be able to have and hold something to gift people or to offer people is just amazing. It's just a totally different feeling. It's amazing.
I love the feel of it. I love the homey sort of feel, and I don't know, it's just really lovely photo.
Beautiful design. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah, my designers are awesome.
Who did your food photos?
The food photos was actually, it's a really cool story. It's a guy called, very talented photographer called Rob Palmer. And as you guys know, I used to be in the hospitality industry, and I left bartending about, that was 2018. It was very early 2007. So let's call it 11 and a half years ago, and which is crazy. But back then and before, like in my years of running one of the schwankiest little cocktail bars in Sydney, I used to do a lot of the magazine feature spreads for, you know, the summer cocktails, the summer cocktails and all that kind of stuff for Gourmet Traveller or for Bartender magazine and things like that. And Rob and I would work together to produce those back then.
Really?
So when I saw that he was doing the pictures for my book, I was like, oh my gosh, I get to work with Rob again. And he's so talented. He does Sarah Wilson's books and he's amazing. So I just felt very lucky.
I'm drooling over the gooey chocolate pudding one.
I know. It's and that, do you know, that dish is actually my grandmother's 1972 limited edition Le Creuset roasting pan.
With the blackened bits and all. It's gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah.
So hold on, you don't have a disposable casserole that you don't buy a new one?
Single-use casseroles. Don't you guys know they're all the rage? Yeah.
You don't have to scrub them.
Just throw them away.
But look, all those built-on bits on the dishes sort of add character, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's just beautiful. No, I think you should be very proud. It's a gorgeous book and so practical.
Yeah, I really wanted it to be the book that I would love to have found on the shelf 12 years ago, basically.
I have to tell you, I had a very excited text message from our friend Talisha, you know, Talisha from
from Little Matches.
Oh my goodness, have you seen Alex's book? It is gorgeous and it's just so good. And she was raving about it.
Oh, thanks, Talisha, if you're listening. Thank you.
I love that it's very doable.
Yeah, it's extremely important, right? You know, I think we've all been on the learning end of something that didn't feel doable, something that didn't feel encouraging, and something that didn't feel like we could do it. So, like, you know, I don't know about you guys, but like protocols that you've tried, you know, we've all had our various health challenges, and sometimes you join things and you think, oh, I've failed before I've begun and I want to quit this 3 days in. And, you know, and I just never, you know, I feel like as a custodian of good information, I feel such a heavy responsibility in a good way. But I take it very seriously. That's probably a better way to say it, to ensure that people's journey of change making is a positive and mentally nurturing one, rather than leaving people either feeling OCD that they have to be control freaks about everything they do, or shame or failure for not doing it well enough or as good as that person or moving quickly enough. And just all that stuff is just not serving us in the current paradigm of change making. And I really wanted to do my best to change that story for people.
Alexx, I'm going to take a step back because went into this interview as if everyone knows who you are, what the book title is.
Sorry, I got excited.
I was like, go buy this book now. And people are like, what is
like, what's it called?
You know me, I do things in my own strange way.
But this is exactly why I laughed with you, Jo, the other day on text when we were hooking up, when we were going to have the chat. It's like, well, at least this is one way for us to catch up.
Oh, no, that's what I'm doing. So
I'll leave you guys to it. I'll come back in an hour.
No. Okay. Now Fouad's going to take over and organise us. Go ahead, Fouad, please.
No, really. We just let's start from the book, its title, what it's about.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so the book title is Low Tox Life, and I have highly originally called everything I do Low Tox Life for a really long time. Just makes it easy for everybody to find everything. And, you know, funnily enough, when Jane, my publisher, wrote me the email to see whether I'd be interested in writing a book last year, a lot of people have known me or come to Low Tox Life either through the Go Low Tox e-course or through delicious sort of gluten-free cooking, because that's kind of, I always share as many recipes as I can create, right?
If you look up gooey chocolate pudding, you're going to find Alexx.
That's pretty much the truth. And so I literally thought, I'm going to be going in there and I'm going to have some ideas about cookbooks, because I'm pretty sure this is going to be a cookbook. And so I had kind of come up with some ideas. I'm like, I've got these really great ideas for. She's like, no. Okay, you have to challenge yourself to do something far more important here. And not that cookbooks aren't important. That's absolutely not the case. But what she saw in me, I guess that I didn't see in myself, was that I had actually started a movement. I had defined a phrase, low tox. Not many people know that actually came from me. And then had given it life, had spent the better part of 8 years describing what it meant to be low tox, to the point where now everybody uses it in their clean living lexicon as a way to be. Like, you see people that I've never met before, that aren't even readers of my stuff, that have never come across Alexx before, who say, yeah, I'm really trying to be more low tox. And she said, that is a thing. We need you to be the person who defines this once and for all in a concrete book, and think about what that contents page needs to look like, what journey you're taking people on. And I'd love for you to send me a contents page in the next 48 hours. So I was like, oh my God. And it really kind of, you know, when you get challenged to do, my publisher's Murdoch Books, and I love Murdoch Books. I've always loved their sense of substance and digging deep into subjects. You know, like gorgeous Jude Leroux, Holly Davis, you know, really, really substantial books on the food and lifestyle front. And I just, it was fortuitous, because I'd spoken to publishers before, but you know, you just don't even feel like returning an email, like something doesn't compel you to keep the conversation going. And, I guess part of that was probably having mouldy brain. And for people who don't understand what that means, show number 55 on my podcast will tell you all about that. Yes. But this really just felt different. And so I worked my butt off for 2 days, like nonstop, thinking, how could I organize all the information from 8 years of blogs and courses and content in, like, what does this look like? And that's when I came up with the Food, Body, Home and Mind chapters, and really starting to organise everything into this journey that people could go on, or as the front says, a handbook. So that idea that you could just pick it up and choose your own adventure, and one day go, I want to work on, I don't know, household dust, as unsexy as that might be. It's a good thing to, okay, what are some strategies I can put in place, because that's where the majority of allergens and toxins are in our indoor breathing space. So, and that you could then pick up the page and go, okay, I'm finally going to have a go at convincing everybody in my family that a gluten-free chocolate pudding can taste delicious, and I'm going to invite everybody over. I'm going to make that dessert, and it doesn't need to necessarily be something that you have to follow any steps of, and you can really apply it to your own priorities, what you want to work on. One day you're working on hair, the next month you're working on cutting corners on your food budget, but trading up to organic where possible. Like, there's so many different things you can work on. And my hope in the positive messaging throughout the entire book is that you realize that this is about you building change by your own definition, your own set of priorities, as opposed to saying, following some guru who's making you do it in this many steps and that many weeks. And, everything more becomes a personal exploration of what really matters to us once we do some digging into our own desires for change and what we want our lives to look like. Because I don't think we all do enough of that. We all just go, oh, they're telling us we have to, follow blindly and do it this way, and that's the only way we're going to lose weight or have a healthy gut or, enter any possible promise here, right? And often we don't think about what we want enough. And I recognise that in just running so many courses over the years and seeing people go, no, but just give me the plan. It's like, no, you need to do the work to figure out what you want your plan to be. Then we can slot me in to help you, with whatever it is you want to look at. And now there's the book to help you do that.
It's so easy to dash from one thing to another, just quickly following everybody that pops up.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you get overwhelmed and go, well, actually, that's not working for me.
Oh, hello. And I remember feeling like that with ketogenic diet and thinking, oh, that's, maybe that's finally going to be the thing that brings my leptin down. And because when you're recovering from mold illness, leptin is often sky high in people, and obviously that makes you just feel like this bottomless pit who's always hungry, even though you don't need any food and all that good stuff. And so bringing leptin down, yes, there's a couple of small studies that show that ketogenic diet's amazing for that. But then if you actually look at your own personal DNA, which I had done because it was such a complex medical issue that I felt it really warranted it to navigate this whole mold inflammation thing, was that my genotype does not do well on high saturated fat diets and or high fat diets in general. I do much better with the Mediterranean style of eating, and I've known that. I've actually known that my entire life.
Yeah, it makes sense because of your family.
My very strong French heritage, exactly. Yeah. So, I think we need to look inside ourselves a lot more and think about what our own drivers and our own feelings are around making changes, and not feel like we've failed if someone's way of doing things out there doesn't work for us. And so that was one of probably the most important things in the book for me to convey, that your change has to be something that you design.
Alexx, we've been talking about making changes outside the realm of food recently. That's been a focus for us here in Quirky Cooking. We had this message from a woman in our gut health program about a friend of hers who's a single mom of two dealing with eczema, and she's using a lot of steroid creams and getting steroid withdrawals that she's trying to wean off. Yeah. And they were asking, are there any positive stories out there? Trying to get something hopeful for her to say you can do this, or you can get over it, or whatever. And they were wondering what kind of dietary changes a person can make around this. And I got really overwhelmed just by the thought of a single mom of two who's dealing with that kind of stuff, starting to make change.
In and out of hospital.
Yeah. Imagine, like going on the GAPS diet or something like that when you're that struggling in your life. And, Jo and I have been talking a lot about simplifying your life. And one of the things is the home and the things that you use in the home. So we find that if you make those changes, they're easily more permanent than permanent changes in the diet. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what are the easy points in the home that you can take things around for a human being who's just living in the dominant culture, civilized, Western world, and they're consuming the things that they're consuming and not knowing that they're actually doing them damage? Where do people start to see really big changes without having to put a lot of effort?
Look, I think the number one thing is to have a look at your synthetic fragrance use in the home.
Yeah.
Because that's just a case of stopping using things. So you don't even need to replace them because it's actually just a cultural thing to think that we need to have fragranced indoor air all the time. That's actually completely contrived by marketing.
Hold on, sorry. Like indoor fragrance? Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm thinking no. I'll explain. So basically I'm talking air fresheners, scented candles, scented reeds, plug-in air fresheners, plug on the wall, squirty fresh air systems.
Gross.
Like fabric softener.
Sorry.
Fabric softener is a huge one. And those would be the 4 or 5 things I would simply just stop using, because our bodies are like software systems, right? And I think I heard Jude Lareau create this parallel recently at a talk, and so we're plugging all this information into our software and our computer to make it work. And if we weren't programmed that way to understand that information, there's nothing you can do to make the human body understand a synthetic fragrance that has over 150 chemical compounds in it. There just simply isn't. And so eventually it tries to compute. And for so many of us who maybe we don't have a great set of CYP450 genes, which means we don't process toxins very well, or maybe we've got MTHFR variant, another one who's not great at processing toxins, and that stuff builds up and it can start to create inflammatory responses, which is why you get so many people with multiple chemical sensitivities, why you get so many people aggravated on the skin, in the lungs, however it might show up. Inflammation's a bit of a beast that kind of shows up in really unpredictable ways. And so for me, simply removing some of the things that don't need replacing is one of the best ways you can start, because it doesn't cost you anything. Instead, it actually starts to cost you less. So that's always, everyone always says, but swapping to all these natural products is going to be so expensive. Often we need to reevaluate how much we're buying in the first place and realize that we don't actually need to swap everything over. We can actually just cut down and trade up. Yeah,
that's a good way to say it. Cut down and trade up. Love it.
Can you explain what you mean by cutting down and trading up?
Cutting down and trading up means stop using those 5 things that I just talked about. So your scented candles, scented reeds, fabric softener, and what were the other things? And the plug-in air fresheners and wall air fresheners and canned air fresheners. Just so basically you would be saving, say, gosh, if you buy a scented candle a month, some of those are like $50.
Oh, they're so expensive.
They're ridiculous. And so you could potentially be saving $100 a month if you're counting like all of the fragranced products. So imagine what you can then invest that $100 into instead, right? It could be trading up on some organic food. It could be trading up on seeing a naturopath once a month to get some holistic care over your eczema issue. If we think back to that example and we think, oh my gosh, I just can't afford it. But what else are we spending our money on? And I remember when we first went organic, as an example, my husband was just out of bartending in his first corporate job. It wasn't a great paying job and we had a small baby. And so I wasn't earning, I think I was earning like maybe, not much, whatever it was. I think it was $100 or $200 a week just doing some admin on a small business that I was in partnership in at the time. So suffice it to say that we were on very little coin And what I realised was just by stopping doing some of the things that don't serve me, it then freed up some cash to do some of the things I really wanted to change, which for us at that time was better quality food, more organic food, less packet snacks. And so you kind of realise, oh my gosh, I'm buying all these vacuous packet snacks that are filling my trolley. None of them are nourishing me. All of them are processed. All of them are wrapped in plastic. And all of them cost my weekly shop $60-70. Yeah. So if I take that $60-70 out and reinvest it, that is cost neutral, organic, ethical meat, and probably the top 5 fruit and veg that I would buy. Cost neutral. Doesn't cost you any more. We have to challenge ourselves to just think differently about what we're buying in the first place and match it more towards our goals, and then stuff becomes easier to let it fall away. I really believe that, but you've got to do that defining work of setting your priorities based on what you really want to change, because then the change is going to be easy. If you do it by someone else's book, it's always going to feel like you have to do it instead of you want to do it.
So from what I hear you saying is that Alexx Stuart hasn't always been Low Tox Life Alexx Stuart by the sounds of it.
Oh my God, no. No.
Actually, I have to say, when I read your story in the front of the book.
Yeah, it's the first 2 pages.
I didn't realise, Alexx. I mean, I sort of knew that you were in the hospitality party kind of industry.
Yeah.
But I didn't know and I read it and I got tears in my eyes. I was like, oh my goodness, Alexx.
Yeah.
That's a lot to. Can you tell your story and tell people, where you're coming from?
Yeah. Should I read a little bit of the first? Okay, hold on. Let me just open it up. Okay, here we go. So there's this girl I know. She eats microwave popcorn. It seems to make her cough, but she doesn't wonder about that though. Yum. Her idea of a quick meal is the kind where you pour the contents of the sachet into a bowl, add skim milk, microwave for 3 minutes and 50 seconds on high, add some chopped zucchini at the last minute. She smokes a lot, nearly a pack a day. She really enjoys it though, so she's not quitting anytime soon, although she promises her family with some pie-in-the-sky future date that she would. And by the way, that ended up being May 1st, 2005.
My birthday.
Yeah. Oh, is that? Oh, there you go.
Well, not 2005, but
She has a couple of cocktails or wines after work every night and sometimes a couple of shots of tequila too. She's on 4 different long-term medications for sinus issues, contraceptive and migraine relief. She feels nervous if there are no extra strength painkillers in the house. She's not sure why she gets so sick all the time and needs to pop so many painkillers and cold and flu tablets, but she doesn't really have time to think about all that. Off to work. She gets put on antibiotics every other month for her crappy tonsils and then antifungal medication to deal with the aftermath. Her favourite naughty chips are the smoky barbecue corn chips. So strange, but she coughs and she coughs when she eats them and she gets a headache. But they taste so good. Hold on, just turning the page. She has a collection of more than 50 perfumes, constant headaches, smells good though, fragrance for every mood. She uses a strong-smelling aerosol deodorant, has more than 50 skincare products in her cupboards. She uses a scrub with magical micro-exfoliating beads, thousands of them in every tube. Great. She's pretty sure there are fewer wrinkles on her face because of it, just like the ad said, so she raves about it to her friends. She has more than 200 makeup items she keeps in a 3-tiered display chest. Her eyes water for a good couple of hours after doing her face in the mornings and feel a little itchy. Nice colours though. She buys low-fat yogurt, low-fat dressing, low-fat cottage cheese, low-fat crackers, fat-free chocolate pudding, low-fat tasty cheese, skim milk, fat-free marshmallows, and a low-fat breakfast shake popper as a part of her regular shop, all of which she believes are the better choice because the ad said so, right? She uses an air deodorizer so that the hospitality uniform smells nice and fresh, and fabric softener to make everything super soft and smell yummy. She's really thin, so she must be pretty healthy, right? She could be any of us out there and probably is, at least in part. But in this case, she's actually me, age 26.
Right.
That was me. That really was me. Everything about it. Didn't even share all of it. That's just a bit of a snapshot.
But, I think the thing that made me feel a bit emotional was that's so many people. And
it is.
They don't know why or sometimes they don't even realise that they do feel unwell.
Absolutely.
Until they start making the changes and then they go, oh, it's not normal to have that dull ache in my head all the time. It's gone. Yeah. And it's sad. to see that. But wow, what a change you've made. So how did you start to change? Why did you start to change?
Well, I think as for many of us, it was that kind of that breaking point where you think something forces you to out of the box thinking. Because if you grew up conventionally, and I was, child of the 80s and 90s, is like peak convenience mentality.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a war on waste documentary to shake the bigger portion of the population up about what choices we were making. Like, we were all just living convenient lives, and how handy was it that we had all this convenient stuff and fun stuff and tasty stuff and stuff to take a nice break with. All that marketing was our generation. And so if you grew up in a city and were just living a regular life, it was all there. But what I had as a bit of a turning point was in my late 20s. The tonsillitis just got so bad that the antibiotics weren't working anymore. And that was sort of a bit scary. And I'd been on the third round for this particular bout of it. And then what happened? Yeah, I remember a friend was over and she said, look, I know it's a bit kind of out of like left field, but maybe you should see a naturopath. And I didn't even know what that was. I had no idea.
That was me when I first saw it.
I know.
I know. They were a bit woo-woo.
Yeah, that's right. And so I found one. She recommended one through a friend that had been to one. It sounds like a drug dealer, right? It sounds a bit underground. So I went, and Christine really changed my life. She really showed me, first with the fixing of the tonsils, second with the elimination of gluten way before it was cool to do so, and the impact that had on my general health and general resistance to every, Tom, Dick and Harry infection that might come along that I would always normally get. Just stopped getting those. And to my headaches, which largely calmed down after leaving the cosmetics industry a few years before bartending, but really just stopped getting migraines. I haven't had a migraine since I quit gluten. Yeah, so no, 3 mild cases of tonsillitis, I think, in 14 years compared to 4 or 5 times a year.
It's been 14 years since you quit gluten?
12 years since I quit gluten.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you haven't died from a gluten deficiency yet?
I haven't died from a gluten deficiency, no. I think I remember when I was pregnant with Seb, I knew that if you had allergies or intolerances to things when you were pregnant, you tended to be able to take them back up. So, of course, as a half Frenchie, I remember having my daily palmier from the local bakery and having the odd croissant. And it was funny because when Seb was born, I then was lured into this false sense of, spelt's fine. Spelt's like the more digestible form of wheat. But obviously once you have the baby, a lot of those issues come back. And for a while I just kind of convinced myself that they weren't coming back, but I got tonsillitis mild, but I got it twice, and I thought, oh, no, I've really just got to not do this. So, yeah, been fully gluten-free for 9 years. But interestingly, the next thing that really made me think, wow, these holistic practitioners, people who look at the body in a way to sort of set up all the systems so that our body heals itself more efficiently on its own, was when I had the success with Christine on the gluten front, on the tonsillitis front, and then I hadn't had a period for almost a couple of years coming off the contraceptive pill. Wow. And I said, okay, what do you got for this? Because I've just been told I might have early onset menopause after a whole bunch of tests, which also revealed PCOS. And she just laughed, and she was really angry that I'd been told that. So it sort of clued me into the fact that there are people who believe that these puzzles are worth solving. And once you've come to the end of one road, that doesn't mean you just stop trying to solve them. It just means you explore a different road. And so she had me swinging again in 6 weeks on, some disgusting tasting herbs, of course. But I was just like, wow, you're like some kind of magician. This is crazy. Because that those were long-term issues that both just kind of got pipped straight away after working with her. And while I would never go see a naturopath if my vein had burst or if I needed an emergency C-section to get me and my beautiful boy healthily into the world together and not die, I would see our incredible medical and modern medical system for acute care. I do believe very firmly that we all need a good GP and a good naturopath or nutritionist on our side in our toolkit, because they both just know such different things.
Yeah,
and it's looking like that's a great way forward for many people now, more and more. So that's kind of how I started to realize there was a connection between what I was eating, what I was putting on my skin, and how I was feeling. And over the years, I guess, one of the most important things was to really kind of become a bigger picture thinker when it comes to health concerns, and to not just think, I'm just going to take what's in front of me right here, right now to fix this today, to make it go away. But I'm going to think, what's the big picture of why this happens more than once, and then you start to look at that with problems in the world. And that, you can make the picture as big as you're brave to do. So that's kind of why I then started writing, because I just wanted to keep making this bigger picture for more people. And 8 years ago, there pretty much wasn't anyone talking about environmental toxins in a friendly blog kind of format. It was mainly sort of activist or big activist networks that were saying really scary doom and gloom stuff and doing incredible work, of course, but like often not relatable to the common person. Yeah. And so I just started picking up products, picking up things that I used, researching what they were made from, and starting to connect over that. So things like, okay, tooth floss. Let's have a look at what that's made of. And then you go, oh my gosh, it's coated with Teflon, sugar, and just things like that. So everything, I would then just start to write a blog, and one thing led to another, and then started to realize, I guess, that it wasn't practical to be up till 2 a.m. answering people's questions about what shampoo they should get, or iron they should use, or castor oil they should buy, or, all those sorts of things. And that's when the courses started to take it again next level and be able to help more people.
Alexx, this is a book that's really going to be used for change. People are going to be changing their lives based on your book. So the work that you've been doing has been focused around allowing people to change their lives for the better and to go low tox. What's your experience? What's the hardest thing about change, and where do people find snags, and how do they overcome them?
Well, I guess, we've kind of touched on it already, and I really think it does come back to whether you've done enough thinking work on why you're curious to make a change in the first place, what the desire factor is, and what the deeper understanding about the why of the change in the first place. So in the book, I talk about an example, which so many of us have been through, is trying to damn well forget to remember your reusable bags. And that was like a 2-year process many years ago now, but it was a 2-year process of, just this once. Oh, bugger, I forgot it again, and like just permissing myself. And then I saw a documentary that really helped me understand the magnitude of plastic pollution, and that the ocean is downhill from everywhere, and that we are fools to think that 70% of throwaway plastics don't end up in the ocean, because they do. And I think 50% of the plastics that are produced are used once. And things like that just made me go, whoa, this is crazy. And so I really got in touch with a very powerful emotional connection to why I needed to once and for all not just do this sometimes, but really make that change. And it became a big priority. So these are the little factors that then start to set you up for success. No different to setting up a success for successfully quitting smoking, or successfully making sure you home cook half of your meals from scratch, or, whatever goal you might want to set yourself up. If you don't do the work to really understand why, and to really get in touch with why you want to make that change, it's not going to work. It's why everybody quits diets after 2 weeks. People haven't done the work yet. And that can sometimes feel confrontational, scary, but it's also the most exciting part of the whole thing, because you're like, wow, you get some rah-rah in your belly and you go, I really want to do this. So with the plastic bag example, like I just started saying to myself, no, if you don't have the bag, you don't get to shop any more than you can carry. And so I remember buying 10 avocados for a party because I was on guacamole duty, and just stuffing these 10 avocados in a tiny little bag that I had. And I thought, everyone must think I've shoplifted these because this looks really dodgy. Or like wrapping things in my gym towel and carrying them back to the car that way, and doing things that were inconvenient to me. And then once something's become a bit inconvenient to you, you're like, I am now very incentivized to remember that bag. Or, you know, if you say to yourself, no cup, no coffee, then pretty much every urban coffee drinker who routinely goes to a shop to get a coffee a couple of times a day is going to very quickly start remembering their reusable cup. But so a bit of gentle discipline is also important, but discipline doesn't work and doesn't last, I really believe, unless you've done those first two things, which is to really understand what you want to prioritize and then to gather the information you need to make that priority feel like it really needs to happen and you want it to happen badly. Really? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I mean,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was looking at your list of reasons why we find it hard to make change, and you touched on this earlier, but I thought the way that you said this was so good. You said we copy someone else's version of change. We lose ourselves in the process, and then one day we wake up and we think, I can't do this anymore, and we give up. And that's such an important point. And I know we mentioned it before, but like for me, the plastic bag thing, I was the same. I found it really hard to remember. And so probably half the time I would forget my plastic bags. And I had to figure out a way for it to work for me. And I think you mentioned also that you just put your reusable bags everywhere. So I've got them in the back of my car. I've got
totally.
them in my handbag by the front door. But thankfully our shop also has a big wooden crate out the front with reusable material bags that anyone can use and put back when they're done.
Yeah, we've got a lot of those popping up around here as well. Great. They're awesome.
Some young girls did it in the town. And so, you know, you do have to figure out ways that you can manage yourself. I had a question to ask you. Where is it? Oh, yes. So can you give us some more, like you did at the start talk about the fragrances. What's something else that someone can do? It's a simple step to start easing into the low tox kind of life, because it does overwhelm people. When you're talking to people, what are you finding that they're able to change pretty easily? What's another one?
One of the other ones, because I always share my mouldy story when I give talks now as a commitment to raising awareness on how many of us are affected by mould and negatively impacts our health. Something I'm finding there is that people they're desperate, like, how do I improve my indoor air? How do I keep humidity down? And for me, one of the best things you can do if you live in a humid area is to invest in a couple of dehumidifiers for your indoor space.
I need to do that.
They're really important to have. And yes, it'll cost you probably $1,000 to have two, but like, think about the cost. Like, you would die if you knew how much I spent on trying to get out of this chronic inflammatory response syndrome mess. At least, well, if you count having to ditch all of our furniture and buy all new stuff in the move, you're
Maybe
looking
you should just explain what this mould thing is. We have talked about it in another podcast, but in case someone's coming into this not knowing.
Yeah, sure. So mould can affect about a quarter of the population who don't have the gene mix that helps you clear the mycotoxins that mould spores produce. And depending on what the mould spore count is in your home is going to depend on the quality of your indoor air when it comes to mould specifically, and the quality of your health and the probability of inflammation or a chronic inflammatory response that you make to that mould. Because kind of like someone with almost like someone with an allergy having an immune response to that food, even if a tiny grain of it goes down their windpipe, their digestive tract. So, or, a hay fever sufferer with a pollen, it doesn't take much and it creates this immune response. But an inflammatory response is a little bit different and can affect any and every system in your body. So we didn't realise, because we didn't have a typical kind of black mould growing on the walls situation. But I do remember, in retrospect, of course, man, I hate retrospect as a teacher. It really is just one of the most frustrating things, isn't it? But I remember looking back, I remember thinking, I feel fantastic when I'm travelling. I remember thinking, gosh, when I go to Margie's house down south, I can sit at that dining table till 2 a.m. with the most crisp brain and write long-form research pieces like it's nothing. But at home, I feel like I'm just fuzzy, I'm foggy, it takes me forever to get something done. And then I remember going to overseas with Ollie. We were away, I think, for about 9 days. And we came home and the whole house had been closed up because Seb was on grandma share. He spent half of the time with one grandma and the other half with the other. So no one was at our place. And so everything was locked up and it was winter. And I remember getting home, feeling the dampness of the carpet, seeing the condensation over all the windows, and curling up on the couch. And it's the closest experience I've had to depression. Wow. It was almost instant, and it was literally like my environment had closed in on me, and I felt dark, and then, but I couldn't. But like, you rationalize. You think, oh, it's so cold. I hate winter, or you think, rationalization is another curse, because you think, no, don't rationalize this. Try and figure out what it is about this house that's making you feel this way. Which is why I think building biology is one of the most important important new tools that we have. But yeah, so over the years, obviously, one of the other things that just sort of started to happen, even though I eat beautifully and food that really suits my body, but my digestive system just kept getting worse and worse. I kept putting on more and more weight. I'm about 10 kilos heavier than I was 8 years ago, by eating better than I've ever eaten. And, and that just makes no sense. So mould can drive leptin levels in people. And so you can end up on a very, very unintentional weight gain journey, being surrounded by mould if you're one of those 1 in 4 people. And not have any idea why it's happening. It's like, why me? And then, of course, because it's an inflammatory response, if you try to do lots of cardio, lots of spin, lots of big functional exercise programs, you actually put on more weight because you just become more inflamed. And so all this stuff is happening and I'm having no idea why it's happening. But retrospect keeps teaching me, when you're away, you're better. When you're back, you're worse. And the last one was getting a leaky tear duct. And when I say leaky eye, I mean literally just tearing all day, every day. And it was the strangest thing. And I was like, gosh, this is really weird. And I remember going to Mauritius for my godson's wedding, and it stopped while we were over there. And I thought, oh, thank God that thing's finally stopped. And then we came home and it started again. I was like, oh, damn. And then the ophthalmologist and the oculoplastic surgeon who was looking at why this tear duct might be blocked, because it didn't have something in it. It was just closed up. They both kind of rationalised that, as did I. Rationalisation again. It must have just been all the good salt water and getting good drainage. It was inflammation. So you look at the mould symptoms and the multi-system response that people can have, and leaky tear ducts is one of the, because your tear duct is so tiny, right? So if you're inflamed, it's very easy for that to get inflamed and close, and not be able to pass tears through. And then I started to make a link between histamine first, and then sort of going down that histamine journey where I was sort of like, gosh, when I eat, that's when I get the major palpitations. What am I eating? And then, of course, what am I eating? I'm eating long-cooked broths, cultured foods, all the things that are higher in histamine, oily tinned fish. I mean, I was eating a lot of the top foods for histamine content, which then got me into mould forums almost from Google accident. I didn't, you don't know what you're searching for until little pennies drop and you start to kind of piece it all together and you go, oh my gosh, all the foods I thought I needed are the foods that I really don't need right now. It's not to say I won't need them again down the track when my inflammation's under control, but for a couple of years I've got to be much more mindful of sticking to extremely anti-inflammatory foods. But as you guys know, with GAPS, right, like that can be extremely anti-inflammatory to the people that it supports, right? So this is where inflammation becomes really confusing for people, because it's like, well, something's anti-inflammatory to that person but not to me. And this is where we need to be our best teachers and lead by symptom first. And really, like as any great doctor will say, I listen to my patients for the answers. I don't look at a blood test. And I think, you know, we need to surround ourselves with more people who take us for face value for what we're experiencing, rather than it not necessarily fitting into anything anyone understands yet. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
And so once I started digging around mould forums, I was like, oh my gosh, and it got me into Dr. Shoemaker's work, and then I saw his multi-system graph that he has for like all the different symptoms. And by this stage, it was January or February last year, I think. So I'd had the tear duct surgery, and it fixed the tear duct because they put like a little silicone kind of, stent in to open it back up again for 6 weeks. And, but I had kind of started tearing again every now and then. I was like, whoa. And guess what? Like in the literature, it says it's very common for this to recur in people.
Oh.
It's like, yeah, because if you stay in your freaking mouldy house.
Yeah, you haven't dealt with the root cause.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So then I started checking off all these symptoms that I'd started getting thick and fast when it became a full inflammation cascade. So, I mean, you know, take a pen because it's going to take you 5 hours to notate. But very quickly, I'll share a few. So the leaky eye, electric shocks, shooting, stabbing, random pains anywhere in your body, and migrating skin pains, so little patches of skin that would hurt, and then it'd migrate to another patch of skin somewhere else on your body, but there would be nothing you could see, like it wouldn't be eczema or red or rashy or anything, it just hurt. Hives, heart palpitations, ectopic beats, tachycardia. And this is my list of symptoms, not the full list of symptoms on the, there are a few extra ones. Severe gut issues, so either constipation or diarrhea. I guess constipation is the better one to have of those two because you can always do something about it. But so I had that. What else? I could go on and on. There are so many more. So brain fog, severe brain fog. Anxiety, a jumpiness. I remember Ollie walking past me in a corridor, and for some reason I just didn't know. And it's a 3-bedroom apartment. It's not like it's a huge house, but I didn't know he was on the bedroom side instead of the living side for some reason. And not that it should even matter, right? But I jumped out of my skin, and my heart didn't calm down for about 4 hours.
Really?
And then my sister, I remember when I was at my worst, was around Christmas time, 2016, 17. And I went for a walk after dinner with my sister and my dad. And you know those bits of bark that kind of curl up and fall onto the ground from like gum trees and things? Mm-hmm. So she just played a very normal sisterly joke and like pulled me to the side of the road really quickly and went, oh my God, it's a snake. And I didn't get to sleep till 7 a.m. the next day. 7 a.m. the next day, my heart finally started to calm down. So that is how... That's how much adrenaline is running around your body, basically trying to clear toxins. You pee every half hour to an hour through a whole night. Your body's just trying to pull every card out of the deck to trick out of it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And nothing is working. Lots of sweats. And I think I've even missed some. I really do. It was just horrific. Oh yeah, twitching and tremoring, of course. Nice. The worst too. And that made me feel like, oh my God, I've got some sort of terminal disease. No one can feel this bad without it being near death. Like that's how bad it was. And people could make me sound like a crackpot or like I'm exaggerating. I know how I felt, and I felt very, very scared. And it was, I think, my positive outlook or my desire to be hopeful on the outside that maybe meant that my family didn't quite understand, or even Ollie didn't quite understand how bad it was until I speak back about those times. It's like, how did I not know that that's how bad you felt? But I really, really, really felt horrific. And And so getting...
Due to mould.
Oh, yeah, because it takes a good couple of years to fully recover when you've been exposed for that long. We were in that apartment and a mouldy one before, so in total 9 years. So it's definitely going to be a slow road, but just the act of moving out of the old apartment and into our new one. Shortness of breath. Sorry, that was the other one because I just got moulded the other day and I've still got shortness of breath recovering from that.
So you found the mold in your house? It wasn't obvious? It was hidden somewhere?
It was probably through the carpets and in the dust. So the humidity inside with the carpet slab problem. And those two things, and the condensation in the windows. So we did an ERMI test, which is a dust test where they send a Swiffer kit where you swatch 10 different spots around your home for the dust, and then you get a report on the mould species and what's living there and in what counts and whether or not it's safe, or because there's mould everywhere. Like it's actually a natural part of nature. It's not necessarily evil, but kind of like microbiome and pathogens, you've got to keep the populations in check, right?
Yeah.
And so this test shows you 4 quadrants of mould levels, and the 4th quadrant was what the result was for us. And it was like, of course, that kind of beep, 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 the red, like totally blocked out, get the hell out of here or fully remediate. And you have to remove the person who's got SIRS from this place because they will never feel well in that house. And so, it's a tricky one because, you've got the husband that feels totally fine, but you've got the partner that, and this is how people can start to feel like, oh my gosh, there's such a hypochondriac. Everyone else is fine here. It's so not the house. But it's a gene thing. And if you just happen to have the wrong mix of genes, then it's really something to be mindful of and something to pay attention to. A lot of people get misdiagnosed with chronic fatigue, arthritis. In the States, I've heard of cases of Parkinson's or MS being diagnosed when actually it's mould. And I'm not saying every case is, of course not. There are very genuine cases for these things, but it's definitely something that's not on enough people's radars. And while it wasn't my intention to go down that rabbit hole with you guys, I think
maybe it's somebody out there needed this.
100%. I do it at every talk now. I don't care what else they've brought me on to talk about, but I always mention my mouldy story because it's so huge. And even at a conference that I did for Commonwealth Bank, their risk management area of their business. So it was like 300 people in a big ballroom at a big fancy hotel in Sydney a couple of weeks ago. I still did my mouldy story. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And this guy came up to me at the end. He said, do you mind if I have a chat? He said, I had an unexplained stroke. No one could figure out why I had this stroke last year. My daughter had asthma and tics, lots of facial tics and things. And I didn't realise. We just happened to have a rental lease end, so we moved. And we felt much better. And I had no pennies dropped because I didn't really know what we were looking for and why. We were just both glad we didn't feel so bad anymore. But as soon as you mentioned mould, I remembered 3 of the walls in our home having black mold growing on them, and that was just the most awakening moment I've had in a long time. And so this is not discriminatory. Rich people, poor people, any person, if you're the 1 in 4, you've got to watch out for yourself because these things can blow up into full inflammation cascades, and I never want people to feel as bad as I did if I can possibly help it.
So, Alexx, now you've recovered. You're amazing. You're going to
It feels so good to have my brain back. Just to be able to give a talk and feel like I can organise my thoughts. Oh, my gosh.
Your words work.
Yeah, my words work because word recall is one of the other issues. And interestingly enough, I know Seb must have a little mix from me on the mouldy front because he used to get the odd nosebleed, which is one of the symptoms. And he just sounded like a Mr. Snuffleupagus in bed, and now he sounds quiet as a mouse, so quiet. And his handwriting improved phenomenally within the first month of moving because it obviously affects your brain. It's brain inflammation is one of the major concerns. So, it's incredible. Just moving out, I got at least 50% better within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Something like word recall also could be related to adrenal fatigue. So just a shout out to the audience.
Yeah.
Definitely get the mold and all these, the home biology stuff. We did an episode on that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Link to that in the show.
We'll put a link to that too, but get it all checked out for sure. But there are the list of things that Alexx talked about. If you've got a bunch of those, it could be a really, really good sign that you might have mold in the house.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing, it's so confusing, right? Because none of those symptoms relate to anything we've defined clinically before. So people are just like, Jesus, there's all these weird things wrong with me. What's going on? So, yeah.
Alexx, it's really interesting when I hear you talk, because like you mentioned that you're still sort of recovering. It's a long road to recovery from spending all that time in a moldy house. And it's super important to us to see people like you who are, in a position of a mentor or a leader in the health area to actually be talking about their own health journeys and where they're at with honesty and transparency. Maybe you can share a little bit about where you are now and how you feel and what you feel you still have to work on.
Oh, that's a great question. And I think, we don't talk about this enough. Everybody, like I remember being at someone's house because they were interviewing me for something. I can't even remember what it was. And they were like, hold on, I've just got to put my eyelashes on and my hair extension in. And like, it's like, but you're selling health, and that's the reality of our industry. There's a lot of fakeness. There really is. And it makes me sad that these beautiful people feel the need to change physical parts of themselves to the degree whether it's not their own. Like I'm a big fan of makeup enhancing our natural features or people who, or, I've even had friends in the past who've had really big personality issues around anxiety because they've had a crow nose. I understand that kind of adjustment and getting a nose job in that kind of situation if it's really impacted your ability to socialize and feel good in the world. Like I get all of that, but I definitely don't get putting on a show when really the world just needs reality. We need real people having real conversations and being super, super honest about the fact that even though it's not about future-proofing ourselves and being able to control everything, it's just about giving ourselves our best chance at being our most resilient and our most bounce-backable when the SHIT does hit the fan sometimes in our lives, which of course it will, So I guess where I'm at now is I'm still very much working on the SIRS diagnosis. It frustrates me no end sometimes because I am terrible. My body just does not like medication. So, one of the things that's really handy to help you bring your leptin down is metformin, which is an amazing drug when it's needed sometimes for certain people. But I can't take it. It just makes my whole body burn. I can't process it. It just doesn't work. Another one is the cholestyramine, which is the bile sequestrant that draws all the mycotoxins out and expels them through the liver. But that as well, I can only take 2 or 3 days at a time, once every couple of weeks. If I try and go on the 4 grams 4 times a day, I literally get SIRS again, like at its worst. It's like this huge, So that frustrates me, and I'm trying to figure out how best. I work with a wonderful integrative doc here in Sydney and a beautiful naturopath. For anyone who's in Sydney, my little dynamic duo are Kate Johnston from Core Wellbeing as my naturopath and Dr. Minyo in Bonner Junction.
Oh, yes, we met her at the Mind.
She's awesome. She's divine. And so we're working on trying to get phase 1, phase 2, like get the liver just getting used to getting rid of things and because you don't want to liberate all this stuff and then have the liver not be able to actually expel it all. And so we have to go process. That's right. And when you've been exposed to this environmental toxin for 8 years, then, your body's just not working as well as it could be to do this stuff. Yeah. Which is what makes me laugh when so many quack people say, we have a detox part, like we have the liver. That's what it does. You don't need to do detoxing. Yeah. I'm like, well, I'd love for you to look at my case. No, honestly, really come. So that's what I'm working on to get the next kind of phase. But I'm probably up to, just from working on the liver, from at least doing cholestyramine whenever I can, and just eating really anti-inflammatory foods from the SIRS perspective. So lots of sprouts, lots of fresh veggies, lots of smoothies, lots of really nourishing, very high nutrient things like liver pate, which I saw your half-empty liver pate before. That's totally me in my fridge at the moment too, Jo.
I just have to tell everybody when Alexx sat down, we had the videos on, and I said, oh my goodness, guys, look how much liver pate I just ate. And I'd eaten there's about one tablespoon left out of a whole ramekin. I just sat here and ate it just now.
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. And if I make soups, I just do really short cooked broths, and then, don't have any underground starch veggies. I only have, like, pumpkin is my favourite go-to. So that's definitely something I've got in common with the Gaps peeps. I love pumpkin, and what else? And just sticking away from any tinned foods, any seafood that has been sitting at a counter for a couple of days. I tend to just go for frozen, because that means it just gets like off a boat and frozen straight away, so the histamine count stays low. And I just keep avocado, tomato, eggplant to a bit of a minimum at the moment. Like, I've started to be able to have them every now and then, which is awesome, because at my worst I was literally eating lamb mince and rocket and sprouts every day, all day. You remember the retreat, right? Yeah, that's all I could eat.
Keep it so clean, hey?
Yeah. And so
you've made a lot of progress since then.
Oh, so much progress. Oh my gosh.
Well, you're amazing. Like, listening to this podcast, just your ability to articulate yourself and just get the words out there on topics is just amazing. Like, I know how hard it is to have brain fog and do this. Oh my God, you've done amazing.
So frustrating. And I think that's why having a podcast was probably the most lucky thing I could have had, to sort of feel like I could still work, but it's actually an expert doing all the talking. I just have to ask the questions. Because in the hardest time, when I was really sick, I could at least still do that once a week. Yeah. And I could still, because it would really have broken my heart to feel like I had to not do anything.
Yeah.
And writing was definitely something I couldn't do. It's only just now that, writing the book was a monster of a task, getting over SIRS at the same time. But I did it.
And encouraging, though. Congratulations. Cause you've got so much energy now. And
I do.
Sure, you might not be perfectly there, but who is?
I know. Well, it's all just a journey. And something like SIRS is so, it's not even clinically recognised yet. So there's a lot of stabbing in the dark. There's a lot of looking at the individual. There's a lot of trying to figure out what the best treatment protocol is going to be.
How do you spell it if someone wants to look it up?
Chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and the anagram is it an anagram? No, what do you call it? I think it's an anagram. Yeah, it is. Yeah. My son teaches me things about grammar that I've forgotten.
Oh, so does mine, don't worry.
And SIRS, CIRS, is the short thing. Or if you look up mould, MOLD, because the American spelling is going to give you more search terms, mould illness is the other term for it. Yeah. And Dr. Shoemaker is probably the foremost expert in the world on SIRS, because he not only did he coin the term, but he really developed some pretty strong treatment recommendations, very precise, developed the SIRS symptom picture and all that kind of stuff with thousands and thousands of patients over his career. And the poor man, I hope he, before he dies, the medical associations around the world actually recognise mould as an illness for people, because still haven't. No, not even in the States. It's still hypochondria.
Airy-fairy.
Airy-fairy, inflammation.
Well, it's made a big difference knowing it for you.
Massive difference. And just connecting. The Toxic Mould Support Group on Facebook is run by a wonderful Australian guy, Caleb, just seeing people's stories is just devastating, what people are going through. I'm just very lucky that I have been able to have a family support me through treatment, to have a business that I earn a wage from, to be able to, to have had savings to then be able to change my furniture, even though I would have preferred that to finally go towards a house. That's what we were working on. At the same time, health is always number one because, you can live in a great house and just feel horrible. So it's not good. But, all those things I had, there are so many people who
are stuck in their situation, I suppose.
Yeah, they're on pensions and in housing commission estates where the mould is the worst, but they don't have any other way out. So I think, there's a national inquiry the government is doing into mould at the moment.
Okay.
So hopefully that'll mean that there are more rights for tenants especially, and more of a seriousness around mould remediation. Mm.
Do you think so that's going back to your story of, all the toxic chemicals that were in your everyday life, that's greatly impacted how you reacted to mould?
I reckon there would have been, it's all a soup, right? And so it's never one thing.
Yeah.
And that would have been setting a stage for my liver being a bit tired, the bucket getting a bit full, and then 8 years in a mouldy apartment is just, and then the general anaesthetic, which was the icing on the cake, like a huge whack of drugs for an operation when I'm already not a great metabolizer of medication, was the thing that just tipped it. So what's our take home here? Go ahead. No. For me, the take home is it all matters.
Yes.
It's never just one thing. And if you've got weird things going on, like, don't be like me and think, it's not weird enough for me to notice. Actually just go, it's really strange. But, I guess, that's a bit of a catch-22 really, because I was talking about brain fog and resistant weight loss for many years with various practitioners, and no one pinpointed mould until I did. Like, I found that myself.
Wow.
And, women, busy mums, own your own business. You can rationalise all of that, right? You can rationalise you're just too stressed. That's what's making you gain the weight, or you're too tired, and that's what's making you feel a bit foggy. You need more sleep. And I've always slept like 7.5, 8 hours a night, never had an issue with sleep. So I'm like, I really don't think that's it. You're too stressed out. It's like, no, I'm actually a really happy, contented person. Like, people just try to look at you from the outside and put labels on you. Yeah. And I think, again, it comes back to doing the work ourselves and really sitting quietly and analysing things and going, no, I don't think that's it. Even at my worst, I had a practitioner tell me that it was adrenal fatigue, and that my constipation was due to probably the antibiotics that I had to have after that operation. And so I got put on a whole, really intense dose of probiotics. But guess what? Half of those were histamine releasing.
Oh, no.
And because some are histamine releasing, some histamine degrading. So not all probiotics are created equal and right for everybody. And so that actually pushed my histamine issues further, higher, more hives, more reactions to food. And it took me forever to rebalance the gut. We've really got to be careful about what we try. And we've really got to have practitioners who really listen to our symptoms and go, I'm not going to suggest something until we really have a think about your home, your mental state, what's happened in the last couple of years for you. And I remember when I finally saw a practitioner who was a Skype-only guy because he was in Pennsylvania, Dr. Jess Armine, and he's expensive, but he was a hard basket guy, and he worked with Ben Lynch and all of those guys, and if you really had a problem that no one seemed to be able to sort out, I just thought, okay, I'm going to have a couple of sessions with this guy. He made me fill out the patient history form, was an 8-page document, and it went right back to my being born and everything, schooling, everything, absolutely everything, mental stuff, physical stuff, response to long distance running. I mean, there were questions that were just like, wow, this is, it took me hours to fill it out. But when we had our session, he was able to piece together an entire lifetime's worth of soup, as we were saying before. And so that's how we started to arrive at chronic inflammation and then mould much more quickly than I had done.
What a fascinating journey, Alexx. And,
so fascinating. I know we haven't talked about the book in ages, but
maybe we should get you on the podcast to talk about the book sometime.
No, but these things take twists and turns for a reason, and I reckon there's going to be someone out there who was like, "Oh my gosh,
I needed that.
That's my cousin, or that's my mum, or that's my son, or that's me." Exactly. Yeah, so
that's why we don't come into podcasts with we don't always say you have to talk about this, because it's like, well, if it goes a different direction, it's meant to be.
Yeah, that's right. That's totally right. Totally fine by me.
Alexx, where do people find you? What are your offerings, and where can they find the book?
So they can find the book in all good bookstores. Please don't panic if it's I don't know when this is going to be aired, but if you can't find it in bookstores right now, it went to second reprint like literally 3 weeks after it came out, which is awesome. So thank you out there to everybody who did buy the book in those first couple of weeks.
That's so cool.
So there might be some shortages around and about, but Big W, Target, all the David Jones, all the local bookstores, Booktopia.
Big W next time I'm there. That'd be cool to see.
Yeah, I know. And I saw it at Target, in my local Target recently. I was like, how bizarre to have a book in Target.
I'll tell everyone as they walk past, I know
her. I may have swapped with the Pete Evans lunchbox on the higher shelf for eye level. Sorry, Pete. I figured you were doing okay.
Alexx, are you signing the books like by stealth so that people who actually buy it, they go, oh my God.
That's cool. Yeah, do that.
Well, I sign the books if I'm in a bookshop, I always say, hey, I'm the author. Do you want me to sign what you've got? And everyone's so lovely, and then you get to have a chat, and it's lovely. So cool. I did that in Brisbane everywhere. It's going to be very hard to find a book that hasn't been signed in Brisbane, I think.
It's really fun to find a book that's signed. You go, oh, wow.
I know. Bonus. So so the book can be found everywhere. I don't sell it personally because I want to support bookshops. And I think I'm terrible at administration, and we've got a very small team. So I just recognise that it's just better to support all the people out there to sell it for us, which is amazing. And then obviously you can find the blog, lowtoxlife.com, the website, the e-courses, everything is on there. We've got 6 courses now.
What?
I know. Inflammation Ninja, Preconception Ninja, Thrive Kids, Raising Kids in Love Food. I just love the word ninja because I just feel like, especially for inflammation, you need some power words to get you through some really dark stuff. So that's going super well. And inflammation, Low Tox Kids, so people who really want to focus on environmental toxins and stress and kids. And then, of course, Go Low Tox and Real Food Rockstars. So they're all our courses on lowtoxlife.com. And then what else? That Instagram, Low Tox Life, again. Facebook, Low Tox Life. You guessed it. I just keep everything really simple. So if you type that in, and you'll find it. Yeah, absolutely.
And you were on TV recently too.
I know. I've done 2 TV spots and 2 ABC radio spots. So that means my mother-in-law believes what I'm doing now, which is good. Yeah. No, just kidding, Margie, if you ever happen to hear this. We just all have a joke about our parents' generation only believing something once it's been on the ABC. Oh, and so I'm like, done, tick. All the baby boomers are on board now.
Awesome.
Too funny.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure we'll have you again to talk a little bit more as your journey with the book develops, because you're really early on at the moment, even though it has.
I know, it just came out 6 weeks ago.
It's pretty good being on your second print run.
Yeah.
I know, it's nuts.
Hopefully the publishers have quadrupled the quantity now for the second.
Who knows? But yeah, I'm very excited that people are finding it useful and positive, and just like a good gift as well for people who are already on board but have the naysayer.
Actually, I was thinking that it's a very good gift.
Yeah, it's like, don't believe me and all my preaching, Auntie Vera. Here's the book. Go read it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it would be a great gift for young families as well, because
totally. Can you imagine if you got given that at your baby shower? Hello. Yeah.
Oh, my niece is having a baby. I'm buying this for her.
I mean, a jumpsuit they're going to grow out of in 3 days.
My niece will love this book, actually.
There's some delivery guy at the front. I'll keep you talking for a second, man.
Okay.
I'll get my package.
All right. Hope it's an exciting one. Maybe it's the Low Tox Life book.
Who knows?
So, well, thank you so much. I really can't wait to make some of these. I'm just going to mention a couple of the recipes while Fouad's gone. Okay, what's your favorite?
Go for it.
In here.
What's my favourite?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so the spiced fig and gingerbread really is. It really, and that's in the care package feast, which I will be making tomorrow because we're bringing a beautiful nephew into the – well, I'm not doing it. My sister-in-law is.
You're cheering her on.
Yeah, bringing a nephew into the world, which is exciting. But that's always been my number one go-to for part of care package. I've seen it on your page and it looks spiced fig and gingerbread and a frittata, and there's no new mum that ever says anything other than, oh my God, thank you. So so I'd say spiced fig and gingerbread for sure. The Mauritian chicken fricassee.
I was looking at that one.
Yeah, if you haven't had Mauritian food before, it is such a family-friendly dish because it's really mild, but it's really delicious. Like it's the taste of lunch in my childhood, and it just reminds me of so many beautiful things because we're Mauritian.
I will make that one this week.
Oh, yay. Oh, my God, can you tag me when you do?
Yeah, definitely.
I can't wait to see. And then the eggplant curry is delicious as well.
Oh, good. And I noticed on your page your son was having a birthday and you made those cocoa caramel chews for all the kids.
I did. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. And there was something so lovely about seeing all these little hands reaching into an old school lolly jar with parchment paper wrapped individual caramels, and they all loved them. And there I was thinking, oh my gosh, Seb's friend's going to think I'm daggy. They're going to think he's daggy.
They don't have party bags.
Well, when they're 9, you'll remember this. That's the real age of self-consciousness developing and self in relation to others and what other people think, and realising that you're not just going to automatically be friends with everybody in the schoolyard. I'm
still going through that now.
So I do what you really want to make sure that you don't paint yourself as full-blown hippie in some of these situations, because you don't want to tarnish their own experience of developing. You know what I'm trying to say?
60% hippie is tolerable in our culture.
Yeah, totally. So, but in the end, we ended up being rock stars, and he said to his friends, we don't need to buy lollies because my mum can invent them. And then everyone was like, so I became the mum who can invent lollies. So we actually both ended up being super cool.
That's so funny.
Something I was really worried about. So there you go. Like, sometimes we're more worried about what people are going to think than we need to be. And we can actually, in the way that we market it, we can actually end up being the rock star in this picture. So,
and it was such a simple solution.
So
simple. We were just talking about the cocoa caramel chews in her book. It's a lolly for kids that looks really good. So we might have to try that recipe.
Yeah, go for it. And for the people who are either vegan or can't tolerate butter, someone actually posted that they made it with coconut oil the other day and it worked just fine.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
I need to get myself a copy of the book. Jo had to send me photos of all the
Don't
stuff.
worry, he'll delete them and get a copy.
Oh my gosh, no! I will publicly say that I will send you a book. Please let me send you a book.
No, I haven't had it. I want to buy it, so I'll go out and get it. I just haven't had it to do it yet.
Well, you can buy one if you want to. If you need to feel like you're supporting me, but I'm going to send you one anyway. You can give it away and do it, whatever you want to do. But
have you signed any in the Blue Mountains?
I'm actually going to be doing a talk in the Blue Mountains. I think, is it next month or November? I can't remember, but definitely please on the book ordering page, like, because you see out now on lowtoxlife.com, if you click that, you go to the book ordering page and you see, Dimmix, Amazon, all the different places you can get it. Because you can get it now in the UK, all through the UK and Ireland, in all bookshops there. And the US, you'll be able to get it through Amazon from September 4. But you can still already pre-order it. But on that page, there's also a link to all the book talks, because there are heaps of book talks happening, and we're adding to that all the time. So I'm trying to get around to most of the country by sort of April next year.
All right. Well, let me know when you're coming to Far North Queensland.
Oh, my gosh, yes. I need to organise fun. I think because I came to you guys a couple of times last year, I just, it felt recent. So but I'll have to come for the book for sure.
Yes, you will.
Yeah.
Good.
Done.
Awesome.
You've heard it here. I've made that commitment. Cans, here we come.
They can.
She's making
Let's keep her onto it.
Love it.
Alexx Stuart, thank you so much for coming. Low Tox Life, a handbook for a healthy you and happy planet. Awesome book. I loved looking through it. Mine was just coming out, in a few weeks from then, and I'm gonna get my hands on one before you send me one.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks so much for being on the show, Alexx, and we'll get you again maybe to chat about the book. Maybe awesome. At some point, so that we get more
about the
book. All good. I hope everyone enjoys it, and thanks so much for having me on and the gorgeous chats.
Lovely to chat. See ya.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.